And we will start with the last of our Saddle Up series. Hope you're enjoying these. We were joined in 2018 by Erik Olsen. He is engineer. He used to be here in Chicago. Some of you might remember him. He worked with the Department of Environment before it was dissolved, but he works in New York for a German-based company, Transsolar, and is a real brilliant engineer and works on really advanced designs. So we wanted to check in to see kind of what's changed, because he's the last presentation, 2018, was about the facades of the future and the buildings of the future, and we're in the future. So let's see what he has to say. Thanks for joining us again on our Rodeo Look Back series here. We're excited to have you back. You're one of our favorite speakers of the past decade, and I'm glad you could join us there virtually to see what's new. Back in 2018, you joined us in person here in Chicago, and you talked about tomorrow's climate responsive buildings then in 2018, and we'd love to get your perspective on how things have changed since then.
Well, maybe why don't I just talk about high tech, low tech a little bit more generally first. We definitely continue to see that, as usual, benefiting from the kind of transatlantic practice, and our colleagues in Germany tend to be able to introduce things first, and then we follow and adapt in some way here. So I think you see that with, there's an interesting example that of facade-based ventilation and trying to eliminate central mechanical systems even for ventilation while keeping heat recovery. And we had a bunch of German projects that did that. And for me, that's this example of it's high tech because there are some controls involved, and so much of this high tech, low tech topic is how can you avoid heavy systems and so on, but have controls be smart enough that the things that are avoiding those systems, which are often end up being in the facade, work. And so the German schools, and now another project in Stuttgart that's called S111, that have trickle vents, which is a very kind of old-fashioned, low-tech facade-based ventilation, but then putting fin tube elements right in front of that to heat or cool the air, so you don't have more extreme air coming in, really working together with an hydronic heat recovery, where you do have heat recovery in the exhaust air just in one single place. And so there's a little bit of actual technology on the kind of system side involved more there. But it wouldn't be possible without the controls to regulate the flow coming in through the facade. And now we just have this project that we basically ended up doing in parallel, that project in Germany and this project in Poughkeepsie here in New York State, which is the headquarters for Scenic Hudson, that does the same thing with the trickle vents in the fin tube and kind of an enclosure and no centralized mechanical systems for ventilation. But it's because you can have modulating controls on the trickle vents and so on, enabled by a little bit of control tech that allows that to work. And so those sort of things that are really interesting. Maybe the two other things I'm keen to point out, and we can turn to your more specific questions also, is the same thing on shading. I think at that time we were very much at the beginning of our exploration together with Danish architects that we work with so much, and we're probably just still in construction even then for the Olsen Science and Engineering Complex, which is our first project, moving from the kind of high-tech operable shading, which is really common in Germany, like this operable exterior Venetian blinds, to trying to simplify that German approach with fixed shading. And that project opened, I think it opened in 2020 or 2021, and it was really a kind of a milestone that it worked. But we quickly moved on. The next project is the Vagelos Center, Vagelos Laboratory for Energy Science and Technology at Penn, which has fixed shading facades, where we tried to, again, with fixed shading, handle glare control much better than we did on the Harvard project, honestly. And that's an advantage maybe of high-tech materials and design tools. It's ETFE is the shading material, but part of it's very diffusing, part of it is very uh, light transmissive, and there's a lot of design thinking to develop the fundamental geometry, but then using our simulation and so on to optimize it. And now that project just opened, and it seems to be working really, really well. And I'm kind of really excited about what's something a very, very simple facade design in the end, but we needed the technology in order to enable the design. So I think about that also. And then the last thing, just to I think to highlight general high tech, low tech in general this week, as we talk, it's Climate Week here in New York, right? Everyone's like running around going to events like crazy. One of those many events is the first North American launch event for this new initiative that one of my partners emeritus, Thomas Auer, who also teaches at the Technical University of Munich, he's still teaching there, and he, together with the German counterpart to the USGBC, the DGNB, the German Sustainable Building Council, um, has this new initiative called SHIFT, which stands for Southern Heritage for Insights for Transformation. You can look it up. And it's really about, rather than having the global South look to the West or the global North as a model to emulate, which is what has happened so much, and in some cases, like, with rapid adoption of air conditioning in places like India and so on, which is just not sustainable. Trying to turn that around and say, what can we all learn from places that have been using low-tech approaches mostly for a very, very long time? And how can we learn from and adapt for that and make sure that those are being used still in those places? And how can we adapt that to the West or the global North or majority or minority world, as you might call it? And so that's also very interesting relative to this low tech, high tech. And I mean, I want to highlight it because the point of the initiative is to really collect good case studies. And so I'm trying to help them cast a net as wide as possible, make sure people know about it and are getting in touch with them to share case studies.
That's really fascinating. I appreciate you sharing all that. And the high tech, low tech approach you talked about in 2018. Do you feel like things like the pandemic slowed any of the progress down, or do you think it maybe changed any design elements? I'm talking about facade ventilation, removing centralized ventilation. A lot of that was around filters and air quality.
Right. I mean, relative to slowing things, maybe there's kind of three things. Like, relative to slowing things slow down because projects took forever to get done, right? Like, not interesting, but we just presented internally in the spring 6 projects that were opening this year or in the last 3 months or around then, 2 of which were such important demonstrations for us and for the team here in New York in particular, to some extent on this also with elements of this low tech, high tech theme. And I said they're all our COVID babies that they took twice as long as a usual project. And so the long and painful wait to have those, to be able to show people, yes, this is what this looks like. So progress in that way was slowed down because you got to get stuff built and show that it really works in order to then progress to the next idea. But like, I think the point with regard to ventilation, you're absolutely right to bring up that for sure it got people's attention then, and it has not gone away. Like this, that people realizing that ventilation is so important for buildings, and the importance of not just relying on mechanical systems, that people realize, oh my God, like, what if I don't have control over the mechanical system or something? I need a way to be able to provide ventilation in this space no matter what, right? And I mean, I just listened to a great podcast from Joe Allen, who's the real healthy buildings leader from Harvard, where he was highlighting how, like, nobody was thinking about the way interior of buildings impacts your health and so on before the pandemic, and it's like a permanent change that people are highly aware of that. And I totally agree with it, and it makes an argument for why you should have low tech solutions available in your buildings, so you're not completely reliant upon mechanical systems, for example, to provide ventilation, is so super important. And then the other thing is related to this topic of remote work, which I know you wanted to talk about,
Mhm.
like that this theme really emerged of better than home. That if if you want to have people in the office, um, because you see value in that for how your team works in whatever way it is, and maybe I'll stay away from the lightning rod of that. But if you take that as a given, or like there's times you want people to be able to have an office, less about the functional use of the space and how you should be programming spaces. That's also very interesting. A lot more people who are way more expert than me on that. But just the idea that it better be better than home. Because some people, they really want to work from home because it's so comfortable, or they have everything they need there. And we weren't providing office environments that were really, you know, where people wanted to spend their time. And now people started to wake up to that. And that's been a theme for us as like delightful, because that's been a theme for a long time. The idea that we should be creating delightful spaces, and that the quality of the environment you create really is so super important. And that indoor outdoor connection is part of that. And again, maybe it's a little bit of a European idea, where in Germany they have laws, they have labor laws that you must be within a certain distance of the facade and so on. But uh, in the US, people would accept windowless offices and other environments like this for a long time. But can you imagine accepting that at home? And it's illegal. Like, you can't build a residential space in almost any American jurisdiction without access to natural light and vent. Yet and the office is totally allowed. And now people start to wake up and say, wow, if I want to be competitive with somebody's home, then my space needs to be competitive with that as well. And that's a big part of it.
Yeah, the qualitative aspects of office work are just as important as the quantitative energy efficiency savings and things,
Exactly. Yeah.
sustainability. Yeah. I remember in 2018, you presented on a new project in Portland. I wanted to ask you about it. You said it had just gone through its first summer. It was probably one of the first commercial buildings that didn't have air conditioning. And you talked about how the importance of making things simple, but having the high tech and low tech work together still needed to work together. And you talked a little bit about commissioning and getting the systems going. I'm curious how that project's working out.
As far as we know, it is working well now. Like any of those projects, yeah, there was some commissioning to do the first summer. But then there was a post-occupancy study that some students there at the university did, because it's the Carl Miller Center at Portland State University. Um, and what's really exciting that you bring this up is that I had not been able to visit the building since it was finished. And I went to Living Future in Portland. It was because it was in Portland this year in May. Um, and so I stopped by and visited the building. I was glad to be able to just get in. Uh, and it looks great. It was very comfortable. Lots of people using the building. There's ceiling fans, and the ceiling fans were on. I saw windows open and being used. Usually, if something's not working, you'll hear about it. We have not heard any of that, and I was very very happy. Of like, wow, this is really holding up. It looks really good. The building is super vibrant and in use. Didn't seem that there were any complaints at all. Those kind of projects, they raise a lot of questions about, and I wish I knew the answer to air quality, because especially wildfire alert days, right, from wildfire smoke. And now you make me really curious to go back and ask them, like, what have they experienced on those days, and what are they doing? Because that topic, like in the Pacific Northwest, is one that we're really grappling with, and now we start to get it here in the Northeast some as well. I, I don't know if you guys have had it as much in Chicago yet. Maybe it will
We've had
come.
it, and we've had some
Okay.
wildfire smoke from our
Okay.
neighbors to the north for sure.
All right.
And,
Yeah.
we do a lot of air quality monitoring through our
Yeah.
work, and we see the data instantaneously. It's pretty amazing.
And like the minute you have a mechanical system, then you can do something about it, because you can change out the filters and so on. But that project in Portland, if you say we're trying to really just use natural ventilation, and you're trying to eliminate systems, for us, it raises a lot of questions. Well, what do we do if we need to design for up to 2 weeks wildfire smoke alert days, and you just can't do that with natural filtration. You need filters that need higher pressure drop, and it's an open question that those kind of projects are raising for us now. What do you do? The scenic Hudson project I mentioned.
Mhm.
Uh, Also, we have those kind of with the only facade-based ventilation, and we just had a discussion about like, well, if it's an office, maybe it's okay that you'll have a very limited population in the office on those kind of days. Most people will tend to work from home, and you have portable filters that you can provide for those kind of days. So there's new questions that emerge, and there again, like high tech versus low tech, what's the lowest tech way to deal with wildfire smoke?
That's a great lead into my last question for you, which is, you joined us 7 years ago here and gave us your thoughts on what the future looks like. What does the next 7 to 10 years look like for you?
It's such a broad question, right? It's like, but I'm still so focused on, okay, we have to address the climate crisis, and a lot of projects are doing that. We'll just have more and more things, almost everything we touch is all electric anymore. It almost becomes a given, and we're thinking so much about embodied carbon and so on. But remains the real touch point is keeping it centered on people and making great space for people, and how do the things we're doing for carbon emissions and so on reinforce that rather than working against it. Coming back to that word delightful, making really, really delightful spaces. And low tech, another word that goes with low tech that's not the same, I guess, that's sort of emerging is just simplicity. Like, how do you keep things? I mean, this is a little bit too cliche, but it's like as simple as possible, as complex as necessary, right? But that's like we're even more pushing on that topic, and trying to see what can we do to keep the systems as simple as possible. And even when I think we're become more self-critical of our own work, especially of our historic work. If you look at older projects with some double facades or something like that, it's like they're just a little bit too complicated, and we're really trying to like keep the intent of what we accomplish with that, with people's connection to outdoors and the delight of the space, and architectural design thinking, while also keeping it really, really simple so that we know that owners will be able to make it work, that it will work for the occupants and be kind of sustainable in the long term.
Always insightful and a delight to talk to you. I'm using your word now, but it's been a great to catch up here. Is there anything else you want to bring up?
You know, since you mentioned my word, actually, the other word that I coined and we use more and more these days is mid-door. And so I talked about high tech versus low tech, and the other word I would bring into the vocabulary, and we really advocate for what I call mid-door spaces that are neither indoors nor outdoors, which European train stations, other kind of big unconditioned halls, oversized vestibules, uh, uh, covered food halls and so on. We're all familiar with these kind of spaces, but they very rarely get built anymore because owners are so scared of those. I think there's so much potential, a lot of program that has a lot of embodied carbon built into systems to maintain a unnecessary level of comfort and then energy to operating those. We just reframed our expectations and accepted this totally works as a mid-door space. That also goes a long way toward this idea of simplicity and delight, the delight of having some thermal variety.
That's great. Well, again, appreciate you joining us, Eric, and look forward to seeing how the next 10 years go.
Likewise. Great. Yeah. Good to touch
Yeah,
base.
thank you so much.